Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take complex topics, strip away the noise, and really get straight to the critical knowledge you need.
Today, we're embarking on what I think is a really foundational journey. Before we can properly analyze the cutting edge like AI and reinforcement learning in CyberOps, we kind of have to master the original battlefield first.
Right.
So we're diving deep into the fundamentals of penetration testing, pen testing as it's called, focusing squarely on, well, the manual processes, the history, the methods, and maybe most importantly, the huge data challenge that really defines the field today.
Exactly. And our source material, which is looking ahead to AI, wisely starts us off with this baseline. And you have to ask why, right? Because right now, pen testing, it's this highly specialized, very human-driven thing. It needs deep technical expertise. There's organizational complexity.
Yeah, it's not simple.
Not at all. And the AI tools that are coming, they're not being built in some kind of vacuum. They're designed specifically to, augment or maybe even replace these slow, tedious parts of this human skill set.
That's the critical starting point, really. If you want a machine to do a job, you first have to understand the complete, nuanced, messy complexity of the human intelligence doing it now.
Yeah.
Every network's unique, every defense team operates differently, the variables are shifting constantly. We need to appreciate this human element to really get the scope of the problem AI is trying to solve.
Which is often just wading through data.
Pretty much. The inefficiency of sifting through just a flood of information collected during one of these tests.
So our mission today is to unpack this whole Chapter 2 overview. We need to define the players, the teams involved, and the strategic reasons behind the work. We'll look at the history, examine the three main types of engagements, black, gray, white box.
Classic.
Right. And walk step by step through that rigorous 6-phase operational life cycle. And then finally, really focus hard on maybe the biggest immediate hurdle for AI adoption. Collecting and transforming all this varied data into something machines can actually read. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with who actually does the work. And, well, why would an organization spend serious money on this? Hashtag I. Introduction to red teaming and organizational drivers.
So the primary who here is the red team. Red team penetration testing, it's fundamentally a strategic, proactive cybersecurity practice.
Proactive is the key word.
Totally. It's not about waiting for that firewall alert to pop up. It involves simulating really sophisticated real-world attacks, using the exact tactics, techniques, and procedures, the TTPs, that actual malicious actors would use.
Yeah.
The whole goal is to rigorously test an organization's defenses and expose those vulnerabilities that, automated scanners or standard audits just inevitably miss.
And the difference between a vulnerability scan and a red team exercise, that's huge, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A scan might give you, a list of potential holes.
Right, a big list usually.
A very big list. But red teaming shows you how a clever adversary would actually chain those holes together to get to the important stuff, the crown jewels.
Ah, the crown jewels. Okay.
And that leads us right into the core reasons why organizations do this. Our sources highlight two main drivers: risk management and regulatory compliance. Let's hit risk first.
Because the basic truth, the uncomfortable truth, is that no network is ever perfectly secure.
Exactly. 100% secure doesn't exist. Red teaming accepts that reality and kind of turns it into a framework for prioritizing what you protect.
Makes sense.
By simulating a breach, the red team finds those high-risk zones, the crown jewels we mentioned, and these aren't just sensitive files, they're critical assets.
Like IP, customer data.
Intellectual property, massive customer databases, proprietary algorithms, financial transaction systems.
Yeah.
The stuff that, if lost, would cripple the business.
Yeah.
So, by finding the most likely path an attacker would take to those assets, organizations can focus their limited security budget and people where it matters most, instead of trying to defend everything equally, which is impossible.
And then there's the compliance angle. The legal stuff you just can't ignore.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Organizations in regulated industries, they face just staggering penalties if they don't meet specific security and privacy standards.
You hear about massive fines all the time.
Exactly. So when we talk compliance, we're talking about proving due diligence to avoid those huge fines, lawsuits, regulatory actions. Think about all the acronyms.
Oh, yeah.
PCI for credit cards, IEPA for healthcare data, GDPR for European data, SOX for financial reporting integrity. Red teaming gives you documented proof that you're actively testing and validating that you meet these strict standards. It makes security a core operational thing, not just an IT problem.
And the benefits go beyond just the security team, the CISO's office. It affects the whole organization.
Oh, for sure. Executive management, the CEO, CFO, CTO, they get a clear, sort of non-technical picture of their security risk.
Which they need for big picture decisions.
Essential for overall enterprise risk management, protecting the company's reputation, and, frankly, justifying the security budget the CISO is asking for.
Right.
And even product development teams get a huge benefit. Experts show them exactly how their new software might be exploited.
Before it hits the customers.
Exactly, so they can fix flaws before they cause a major customer trust issue. It's preventative. Hashtag the teamwork structure.
Okay, so we've got the mission, the reasons why. Let's look at how the simulation itself is structured. You said it's like a battle, so they're different sides.
That's right. You've got the classic setup. The red teams are the attackers, the offensive simulators, and the blue teams are the defenders, managing cyber defense, monitoring, incident response, all that.
The good guys versus the simulated bad guys.
Kind of. But the problem, historically anyway, was that these two teams often worked in silos. Yeah. Sometimes they even sort of actively worked against each other's knowledge.
Which sounds incredibly inefficient if the goal is better security overall.
It was totally inefficient. And that inefficiency really led to the rise of the purple team.
Okay, purple team. A mix.
Exactly. It's not necessarily a separate group of people, but more like a functional bridge. A collaborative effort designed to combine the red team's offensive insights with the blue team's defensive expertise.
So they translate the attack findings into defense improvements quickly.
Immediately. Their job is to make sure the lessons learned from the simulated attack get translated right away into effective, actionable improvements for the defense strategy. It closes that feedback loop instantly.
So if the red team finds a way in, purple makes sure blue knows how to block it now, not just in the final report 6 weeks later.
Precisely. It shifts the whole thing from just getting a grade to being a continuous improvement cycle. Much more effective.
Are there other related teams?
Yeah, we also see specialized roles that share some overlapping skills, particularly threat hunting teams.
Ah, the digital detectives. The ones who come in after something might have happened.
That's generally right. They're typically called in after an attack is suspected or already detected. Unlike a red team simulating or a blue team passively defending, threat hunters proactively hunt through the network.
Looking for clues.
Pulling forensic data, looking for signs of a breach that maybe went unnoticed. They use a lot of the same tools and methods as red teams, but they're looking backward, gathering evidence.
So red, blue, purple, threat hunters, they all kind of contribute to the same goal in the end.
Ultimately, yes, exposing vulnerabilities and reporting network risks to leadership so things can get fixed. #2, History and Industry Scope of Red Teams, 2.1.2.
Okay, we understand the modern structure. How did we actually get here? You mentioned the internet started differently.
Yeah, the early internet, built by researchers, academics, the military, they generally assumed good faith among users. Security wasn't the primary thought.
Because it was a small club, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. A smaller, closed ecosystem built on trust. The big shift really happened, say, mid-90s, when the internet exploded commercially and reached the public.
And brought a whole new set of motivations.
Exactly. Financial gain, espionage, activism. Suddenly, security became absolutely necessary because everyone was connecting, doing business online. The need just grew exponentially as things got more complex.
It's kind of wild how a practice that really started in military wargaming now touches almost everything.
It really does. Let's look at some key industries, starting where it was formalized. Military, government, and defense.
For the Department of Defense, I imagine red teaming is just standard operating procedure.
Oh, absolutely non-negotiable. The DoD recognized cyberspace as a critical domain of combat, just like land, sea, air, and space.
So their red teams are testing against serious threats.
State-level actors, sophisticated threats. They need comprehensive computer security and defense. It's about identifying national security vulnerabilities, keeping critical infrastructure resilient, high stakes.
Okay. Moving to the commercial world, where the money is. Financial services and commerce.
Yeah, this sector is a huge target, obviously. The motivation for attackers is direct financial gain, and it can be massive. So, pen testing here is highly specialized.
It's more than just protecting someone's online bank account login.
Way more. Red teams have to secure those high-value targets, like online banking portals, sure, but also the entire transactional network.
You mean the pipes connecting everything, ATMs, store terminals?
Exactly. The link from the ATM to the bank or the point-of-sale terminal at the store to the payment processor, Every single one of those communications has to be secured under standards like PCI, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard.
To stop data theft during the transaction.
Prevent interception, decryption, fraud. That network is the lifeblood of commerce. Protecting it needs constant, sophisticated pen testing.
Then you've got technology, telecommunications, and cyber itself. They build the infrastructure everyone else uses.
They really are the foundation. For these sectors, pen testing is fundamental to their cyber resilience. They need red teams securing every part of their vast landscape, starting with the software they actually create.
So, testing during development.
Securing the entire software development lifecycle, SDLC. Not just testing before release, but early and often. Using automated code checks, yes, but also manual expert pen testing to find logical flaws or design issues automation might miss.
And so much of their infrastructure is now cloud-based. That must add complexity.
Massive complexity. Pen testing is crucial for safeguarding those cloud-based systems, the data storage, the processing, access management. Since they're often remotely hosted, highly interconnected, they introduce totally different vulnerabilities compared to, say, an old-school lockdown data center.
You also mentioned the shift in phone networks, away from the old landlines.
Right. Historically, the plain old telephone system, POTS, was inherently pretty secure because it used circuit switching, dedicated lines for calls.
But now it's all internet protocols.
Exactly. It was replaced globally by modern packet switch networks running on TCP/IP, the same stuff the internet uses. That transition basically opened up phone and data infrastructure to eavesdropping, data interception, service disruptions, network attacks that just weren't really feasible on the old system. Red teams are vital for securing this modern, much more vulnerable infrastructure.
And finally, the really scary stuff. Connecting physical systems to the internet. IoT and ICS SCADA.
This might be the highest risk area globally, honestly. ICS SCADA systems manage critical public utilities, water treatment plants, electricity grids, pipelines.
Things we rely on every single day.
A successful attack there doesn't just hurt a company's bottom line. It actively harms the public. It can cause national emergencies. So protecting these industrial control systems is a top priority, and that's alongside the explosion of consumer IoT devices, thermostats, cameras, everything, all collecting and sending data. It's a massive attack surface. What's fascinating here is just the sheer breadth of sectors that now depend on this, from national security down to making sure your payment at the gas pump is safe or your local water supply is stable.
Yeah.
This huge pervasive need for security, it's exactly why automation is becoming so critical. There just aren't enough humans to keep up with the scale manually.
Okay, so we've established that manual pen testing, while essential, is slow, it's cumbersome, partly because of the sheer volume of information involved. Let's shift now to how these engagements are actually set up and negotiated between the testers and the client. And here's where it gets really interesting. Balancing how fast you want the test versus how deep you want it to go. That defines the type of test.
Yeah, that stakeholder conversation, it's absolutely the most critical first step. Before a single packet gets sent, the client and the red team have to sit down and agree on the goals, the budget, any limitations, and make that trade-off, depth versus speed. The industry generally uses three main styles, defined mostly by how much the attackers know up front. Hashtag black box testing.
So black box testing. This is often seen as the truest outsider attack simulation. It's tough because the team starts with almost nothing.
Like really nothing.
The absolute bare minimum. Maybe just the company name, perhaps a public IP address range they know belongs to the company, or a single website URL.
That might be it.
So they're basically starting from zero knowledge, just like a real external attacker who has no inside help. Pure investigation.
Precisely. They have to rely heavily on deep research, investigation skills, lots of OSINT, open source intelligence, and passive recon. They're trying to map out the company's external attack surface, what we sometimes call its cyber footprint or cyber terrain.
They literally have to build the map themselves before they can even think about breaking in.
Exactly. Build the map. Find the doors.
What's the main downside for the client choosing this? What's the trade-off?
Well, the trade-off is often speed versus comprehensive coverage. While a black box test can be fast in execution if the team gets lucky and finds an easy way in early, they have to spend a huge amount of time just on that initial reconnaissance.
Right.
And because they start with so little info, there's always a risk they might miss critical vulnerabilities or hidden assets simply because they never discovered them during that initial hunt. It really demands a highly experienced team, people with a deep knowledge of external network tech, and frankly, top-notch research skills.
Wow.
Tag gray box testing.
Okay, then there's gray box testing. Sounds like it splits the difference, maybe aiming for more efficiency.
That's a really good way to think about it. In gray box, the red team gets a bit more information to start with.
Like what kind of info?
Maybe specific target hosts, some non-public IP ranges, lists of known email domains, maybe general types of infrastructure they use. They get some technical details to work with, more than just the company name.
So this basically speeds up that initial investigation phase. They don't have to spend weeks just finding the public-facing stuff.
Exactly. It lets them bypass a lot of that time-consuming open-source recon. It mimics maybe a more targeted attack, or perhaps like a disgruntled former employee or a compromised partner who has some inside knowledge, but not everything.
Okay.
The big benefit is efficiency. The team can dive deeper into the target systems faster. It's especially useful if you want to test a specific part of the infrastructure, like maybe a legacy application or a developer test network, where the security team suspects the internal documentation might be, well, poor or out of date.
Right, so you give them a nudge in the right direction.
You reduce the time spent just finding the front door so they can focus more effort on picking the internal locks, so to speak. Tag white box testing.
And finally, white box testing, also called glass box or clear box. This sounds like the full immersion all-access pass approach.
It absolutely is. It's the most thorough and often the most demanding approach. The testing team gets pretty much full, unrestricted access and deep knowledge.
Like what? Source code.
Internal documentation, network diagrams, configuration schematics, sometimes even the source code for applications, historical security logs, initial vulnerability scan data from the client's own tools. The goal here is total assurance, leave no stone unturned.
So they're simulating the worst-case scenario, really, like a malicious insider or an attacker who's already completely owned a system and has free reign.
Precisely. The focus is super comprehensive, checking external flaws, yes, but also deep internal design weaknesses, misconfigurations, logical errors. It usually requires really close collaboration, often daily check-ins, with the system administrators and developers on the client side.
They're almost working together to find flaws.
In a way, yes. They might review configurations line by line, analyze code together, looking for those subtle design flaws that would likely be invisible in a black or gray box test.
But the cost and the time involved must be significantly higher.
Oh, much higher. It's generally the slowest and most expensive method because there's just so much information to analyze. The team needs time to digest all that documentation and data.
But the payoff is the most complete picture.
It results in the most comprehensive assessment and coverage possible. And, thinking about our AI discussion later, the sheer volume of structured documentation and configuration data provided in a white box test. That's exactly the kind of rich, contextual input a sophisticated machine learning system would thrive on to optimize its analysis and decisions. #MEDI45, the penetration testing lifecycle and methodology 2.1.5.
All right, so we've got the strategic choices, black, gray, or white box. Now let's move from that strategy level down to the actual execution.
Yeah.
The standard 6-phase penetration testing lifecycle. This is like the operational playbook the red team follows, right?
Yeah.
And it starts with getting into the right mindset.
Absolutely. The adversary mindset is critical. A pen tester has to think like a hacker, and it's worth remembering the original meaning of hacker.
Not just the criminal connotation it has now?
Exactly. Historically, a hacker was someone with this insatiable curiosity, deep technical skill, and a desire to tinker, to use systems in ways they weren't intended.
Exploring limits.
That spirit of exploration, combined with rigorous technical expertise, networking, OS internals, scripting, you name it, is essential. They need to anticipate not just what's technically broken, but what could be misused creatively.
Okay, phase 1, reconnaissance. This is the passive intelligence gathering step. The team is basically just watching, listening, building their map without making any noise on the target network.
That's the key, maintaining silence. Passive means absolutely no traffic hitting the customer's network that their blue team or their security tools could log or detect. This stage is all about building that high-fidelity map of the target network and understanding the best, lowest-risk ways in.
So how do they gather info silently? What are the main tools or techniques?
Well, two primary methods really stand out. First is DNS enumeration.
Looking up domain names.
Basically, yeah. Querying public DNS records using tools like WHOIS databases. This can reveal how IP addresses translate to URLs, uncover subdomains the company uses, sometimes hint at internal organizational structures, and identify other bits of hidden infrastructure, all from public records.
And the second big one, open source intelligence, OSINT, just using public information.
OSINT is incredibly valuable and sometimes shocking what you find. It's gathering knowledge from anywhere that's publicly available.
Like the company website.
Corporate websites, definitely. Social media profiles, particularly LinkedIn for employees, public employee directories, even technical forums or mailing lists.
People overshare online.
Constantly. We've seen amazing examples where employees accidentally reveal critical system info on LinkedIn, like internal server naming conventions, the specific software versions they use. Or worse, someone posts a picture from the office, and in the background on a whiteboard is a partial network diagram.
Oh, wow.
This kind of stuff reveals human vulnerabilities long before you even think about a technical exploit. It's pure gold for reconnaissance.
Is there a smarter, more modern way to do this passively, beyond just Googling?
Yes, absolutely. Using large-scale passive scanning databases. Companies like Shodan and Census.
How do they work?
These companies basically scan the entire internet constantly, 24/7, and archive all the results. What ports are open on what IPs, what services are running, what versions, geographic locations, everything.
So the red team doesn't do the scanning themselves.
They don't have to for this phase. They can buy access to or query this archived data from Shodan or Census. They get incredibly valuable, up-to-date information without sending a single packet directly to the customer's network.
Clever. It just looks like normal internet background noise to the target.
Exactly. It guarantees total stealth during this crucial initial mapping phase.
Okay, so once that passive map is built, the red team has to get more active.
Ah.
They need to verify things, get more detail, even if it means risking detection. That brings us to phase 2, scanning, active data gathering.
Right. This is where the red team starts actively sending crafted data packets to the target's IP addresses and URLs found during recon.
Why? What's the goal?
The goal is to get live feedback, confirm technical details, verify system configurations, enrich the map they built, and hopefully locate specific vulnerable entry points. The real workhorse tool here is the port scanner.
Like Nmap?
Nmap is the classic example, yeah. Tools like Nmap, Unicorn Scan, even Netcat can be used for this. They send specially crafted packets, think of them like very specific digital knocks to target IP addresses to see which services are listening on which network ports.
Listening meaning ready to accept a connection.
Exactly. Port scanning is vital for building that fine-grained network map. These tools usually report the state of each port they check in one of 3 ways.
Okay, what are the states?
Open, which means a service is actively running and waiting for connections on that port. That's potentially interesting.
Good, usually.
Closed, meaning the system responded saying, nope, nothing running here. The connection was actively rejected. Less interesting.
Right.
Or critically, filtered. This means the scanner sent the packet, but never got any response back at all. That strongly suggests some kind of security device, usually a firewall, intercepted and dropped the packet.
So filtered is actually really useful information for the attacker. It tells them where the defenses are.
Incredibly useful. It helps them map the network perimeter defenses. And once they manage to get an initial foothold inside the network, say, compromise one machine, they then deploy network discovery tools.
For moving around internally.
Exactly, for lateral movement. These tools automatically map internal subnets, enumerate running services, identify operating systems, find servers, routers, printers. They build a complete internal topology map from that initial beachhead. This phase also often includes using specific web application scanners to probe browser-based interfaces, company portals, internal tools, which are very common entry points.
Okay, reconnaissance gave us the map. Scanning added details and found open doors. Now comes the phase that really highlights the human challenge with scale. Phase 3, vulnerability analysis. Making sense of all that data.
You've hit the nail on the head. The scanning phase alone might generate alerts for hundreds, maybe even thousands, of potential vulnerabilities across the target systems.
Just a massive list.
A flood of data. And the human analyst, the pen tester, is then faced with manually sifting through this mountain. They have to assess every single potential flaw.
How do they even start?
They have to prioritize based on how applicable the vulnerability seems to the specific system they've found it on, how easy it looks to actually exploit, and critically, they have to weed out the false positives. Scanners aren't perfect. They make mistakes.
I just can't imagine the mental effort required to process thousands of alerts, especially under time pressure. That sounds like a recipe for inconsistency or missing something important.
It's the absolute definition of the needle in the haystack problem. The analyst has to use their experience, combine it with industry standard scores like CVSS, which we'll touch on more, and make judgment calls about which potential vulnerabilities offer the highest probability of success with the least risk of detection.
It sounds incredibly labor-intensive.
It is. It's a massive, time-consuming effort. And this, right here, is precisely where AI assistance is poised to be transformative.
How so?
Imagine AI automatically assessing those thousands of alerts, checking their applicability against the known network topology map, cross-referencing them with exploit databases, and instantly prioritizing, say, the top 10 most likely attack paths based on historical success rates and risk scores. That would be a game changer for efficiency.
Okay, so after analyzing and prioritizing, the plan is set. Phase 4 is exploitation. This is where they actually try to break in. The fun part, maybe?
Yeah, arguably the most exciting part for the tester. This is the moment of truth. The tester actively tries to leverage those prioritized vulnerabilities they identified.
Like what specifically?
Could be anything. Trying to exploit a known flaw in a mail server to relay spam or gate access, attacking a misconfigured DNS server, or maybe executing that carefully planned phishing email campaign they designed back in the analysis phase, hoping someone clicks the link.
But the key difference from a real attacker is the intent, right?
Absolutely critical ethical distinction. The goal is to find the weakness, gain that unauthorized access or control to prove the vulnerability exists, but never to cause actual damage, data loss, denial of service, or disrupt the client's actual operations. It's proof of concept, not destruction.
Right. And if they are successful, if the exploit works, they don't just stop there. They move into phase 5, post-exploitation. What happens then?
Post-exploitation is all about maximizing the value of that initial breach. What did they get access to? How significant is it?
And staying in.
Maintaining persistent access, often called establishing persistence or pivoting. They also try to escalate privileges. Maybe they got in as a low-level user, now they try to become an administrator.
They get more power on the network.
Exactly. And from that compromised host, they move laterally across the network. They might jump from, say, a web server they broke into, steal administrator credentials or password hashes from memory, and use those to access the main domain controller, which is like the keys to the kingdom.
So it's like a cycle within the phase.
It's a continuous cycle of further scanning, finding more vulnerabilities internally, exploiting them, escalating privileges, and moving deeper into the network until they achieve the original goals of the test, maybe reaching those crown jewels they were tasked to find.
Okay, they've mapped, scanned, analyzed, exploited, moved around. Finally, you get to the end product. Phase 6, reporting. If exploitation is the exciting part, this is arguably the most crucial output for the client who paid for the test.
Absolutely. The report is the tangible deliverable. It's the roadmap for fixing things, for remediation, and it really needs to serve two audiences.
Where are they?
First, there needs to be a highly detailed technical appendix. This is for the client's engineers, the blue team, the developers. It needs to detail every single vulnerability they uncovered, explain exactly how it was exploited, list any sensitive data they found, and document the specific methodologies and tools used. Reproducibility is key.
Okay, that's for the techies. What about the bosses?
Second, and just as important, is a high-level executive summary. This is for the C-suite, for management. It needs to be concise, clear, and focused on business impact.
What absolutely has to be in that executive summary?
It needs to quickly convey the severity of the risks found. Using those industry standard CVS scores we mentioned really helps quantify things. It needs a clear business impact assessment. What's the potential reputational damage, financial loss, regulatory fine if a real attacker did this? And crucially, it must provide actionable remediation recommendations, prioritized by risk level. The report's job is to translate complex technical findings into clear business decisions and justifications for action. #TAG-V, the importance of data, 2.2, and machine readability.
Okay, thinking about that entire 6-phase life cycle, reconnaissance, scanning, analysis, exploitation, post-exploit reporting, it just generates a staggering amount of data at every step.
Oh, immense amounts.
So if we pivot now from the manual process itself to thinking about what's needed for automation, for AI and RL, we absolutely have to talk about the data mandate.
Yeah, data collection, data analysis, it's already second nature to good red teams. But it becomes even more critical, almost existentially important, when you start designing machine learning or reinforcement learning solutions to assist or automate this work.
Because ML models need data to learn. Lots of it.
Exactly. ML models don't just magically know things. They require massive amounts of structured, labeled, prerequisite knowledge to train on. The current human process, while slow, is what generates all this complex, detailed data that future AI systems will need to learn from.
Let's circle back to phase 2, scanning, for a second. Just the output from basic port scanning tells a rich story, doesn't it? Even just the state of a port.
Oh, absolutely. It's all in those little details. Like we said, those 3 states, open, closed, or filtered, are incredibly informative on their own.
Remind us again.
Open means something is listening, waiting. That's an invitation, potentially. Closed means the system actively said, go away, nothing here. But filtered, where you get no response, that instantly tells the red team there's likely a defensive layer in the way of firewall, maybe a proxy server.
So that filtered port data helps map the defenses.
It helps build a map of the network perimeter and the security devices protecting it just from those non-responses.
And when a port is open, the information it sends back the banner can be pure gold.
Yes, banner grabbing. When you connect to a service on an open port, that service often sends back a little introductory message, a banner.
Let's send the banner.
Highly useful metadata, usually. Things like the service name, itchy, Apache HTTP, often the specific version number, Apache 2.4.41, maybe the product name, OpenSSH 8.2p1.
And why is that version number so valuable?
Because the red team can instantly take that specific version number and cross-reference it against public vulnerability databases like CVE. Often that version is known to have specific exploitable flaws. It can point directly to a known exploit path, saving the analyst potentially hours of manual probing. Huge time saver.
And tying all this raw scan data port states, banners back to the automation goal. It helps create those machine-readable network maps you mentioned.
Crucially, yes, all these insights from port scanning help map the network topology, 2.2.1.4. Which machines are active, what operating systems might they be running based on banner fingerprints, what subnets exist, where are the security choke points like firewalls.
Okay.
The red team, or eventually an AI, needs to format this complex, interconnected map, often visualized as a graph, into a structured output that an RL model can actually ingest and understand. The model then combines this topology map with vulnerability data and scores to figure out the most efficient attack path.
We rely heavily on automated scanners now, tools like Nessus, Qualys, Nexpose to speed things up. But they don't actually solve the interpretation problem entirely, do they?
No, they absolutely don't eliminate the need for the human analyst, not yet anyway. Automated vulnerability scanners are indispensable, don't get me wrong. They can rapidly scan huge ranges of network assets, servers, workstations, firewalls, everything's far faster than a human could.
But someone still has to understand the output.
Exactly. Setting up the scans correctly, configuring the policies, and then interpreting the massive reports they generate still requires highly trained human expertise. And since experienced network security pros are expensive and hard to find, relying on them to manually decode these huge data streams is a major bottleneck.
A bottleneck machine learning could potentially help clear.
That's the hope. By having ML do that initial decoding, correlation, and maybe even basic interpretation automatically, freeing up the human expert for the more complex analysis. Hashtag the role of databases and non-technical data.
So to make sense of all the technical findings from scans and manual tests, red teams rely heavily on industry-standard databases, right? To score vulnerabilities, categorize them, give them some objective weight.
Yeah, absolutely. We mainly rely on the 2 big ones here, CVE and CVSS.
Okay, what's CVE?
CVE stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. It was launched by Amayari back in 1999. Think of it simply as a dictionary, a standardized list of identifiers. Each publicly known security flaw gets assigned a unique CVE number, like CVE 2023-12345. It's just a name tag, basically.
Got it. Just a unique ID. And CVSS, that sounds more like a rating.
It is. CVSS is the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. It's the open industry standard used to assign a numerical severity score to a vulnerability, typically ranging from 0.0 to 10.0.
10 being the worst.
10.0 is the most critical severity. It generally means the vulnerability is easy to exploit remotely, requires no special privileges or user interaction, and has a high impact on confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the affected system.
So that score immediately tells you how bad it is.
Instantly. This quantitative score allows both the red team, for prioritizing attacks, and the blue team, for prioritizing patching and defense, to act based on known risk. If a red team finds a vulnerability with a CVSS score of 9.8, they know that's probably a very efficient path to investigate further.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We should also remember, though, that not all the critical data points are purely technical, right? Sometimes the human element is the weakest link.
Oh, absolutely. Don't underestimate the power of non-technical data. Think about emails and compromised credentials. Email addresses are the cornerstone for launching sophisticated spear phishing campaigns. And social engineering attacks often rely on seemingly innocuous bits of personal or corporate information found online.
And leaked passwords.
Huge factor. Red teams actively search breached password databases using sites like havebeenpned.com is common practice to see if corporate email accounts are using passwords that have already been exposed in leaks from other websites.
Because people reuse passwords.
All the time. Finding a valid, reused password can provide an immediate, non-technical way straight into the corporate network, bypassing a lot of technical defenses. #tag the data formats challenge.
Okay, now we arrive at what sounds like the biggest headache, especially when thinking about automating this with AI, the challenge of different data formats.
Yeah, this is a colossal hurdle, a real bureaucratic nightmare for any data-driven system.
Why is it such a problem?
Because the data comes from this incredibly diverse, heterogeneous ecosystem of tools. You've got output from Nmap, maybe Nessus, maybe Qualys, maybe Metasploit, various open source OSINT tools, custom scripts.
And they all spit out data differently.
Rarely standardized. One tool might give you CSV, another XML, another JSON, another a proprietary binary format, another a nicely formatted PDF report.
Which is fine for a human, maybe, but not for a machine.
Exactly. For machine learning to work effectively, all this disparate data needs to be ETL'd. That stands for extracted from its source format, transformed into a consistent, structured format, and then loaded into the system or database the AI model can actually ingest and process.
A human can glance at a PDF report and pick out the key info, but an AI needs structure.
It needs structure, clean labels, consistency across sources. It can't easily parse fancy formatting or understand context from layout like a human can.
Nessus is a great example because it's a widely used commercial scanner, and it offers like 8 different output formats itself. Think about the difference between the human-friendly PDF report it can generate versus machine-readable formats like XML or CSV.
Which is better for AI? Well, for large-scale AI applications, something like CSV, comma-separated values, is often preferred. Even though it looks less pretty to a human, just rows and columns of text, its inherent structure makes it predictable. Columns like plugin ID, severity, CVSS score, host IP, port. That structure is easily ingested and processed by data science tools and AI models.
Okay, so CSV is structured. What about XML?
XML can also be structured, but it uses tags. So instead of a column header, you might have tags like CVSC score 9.8 CVS score embedded within the data.
Which the machine has to parse.
Right. The machine learning pipeline has to be programmed to find those specific tags, extract the value between them, like the 9.8, and correctly associate it with the right host or vulnerability. It adds a layer of parsing complexity.
So the sheer volume and the different types of data.
The volume, the heterogeneity. Think about everything collected in a test. Network logs, scanner outputs in various formats, manually created topological maps, vulnerability scores, notes from the analyst, maybe non-technical data like lists of compromised emails or passwords. It's a mess.
It really demands a serious data strategy even before you think about AI.
Absolutely. And this massive data transformation challenge, it's probably the clearest indicator of where AI and RL can offer huge efficiency gains. If they can automate that ETL process and the subsequent analysis, it could fundamentally change the speed and scale of penetration testing. Otherwise, the human analyst just drowns in data. #tag outro.
Wow. Okay. That really covers a lot of ground. That concludes our deep dive into, well, the foundational manual framework of penetration testing. We've gone from the strategic why of red teaming to the operational how of that entire life cycle and really focused in on the massive, unavoidable data challenge that defines so much of modern cybersecurity.
Yeah, and what should be really clear, I hope, is that the human process, while it's structured and rigorous, is also critically slow and cumbersome, largely because of that data overload we just talked about.
Right.
So the future, when we talk about using AI and reinforcement learning here, it isn't necessarily about AI inventing some magical brand new type of exploit out of thin air.
Not yet, anyway.
Not primarily, no. It's much more about automating the analysis part. The rapid, sophisticated analysis of existing vulnerabilities, the prioritization based on risk and network context, and crucially, the optimal planning of the attack path, automating the plan itself.
Because right now, that ability to connect the dots to see how thousands of little data points from logs and scans fit together into a viable attack chain that still relies so heavily on the experience and intuition of the individual human pen tester.
Exactly. That sense-making capability is the bottleneck. And the biggest immediate hurdle for these next-gen AI tools, the ones meant to augment or even replace the human analyst in some tasks, is overcoming that ETL challenge we discussed.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Pretty much. They have to be able to successfully ingest, transform, normalize, and then analyze all that complex, messy, varied data that humans currently generate with all these different tools. If the input data isn't clean and structured, the AI's decisions, its attack plans won't be reliable.
So to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought that bridges this manual work to the AI future. Maybe the true force multiplier for attackers and potentially defenders in the coming years won't just be the discovery of entirely new zero-day vulnerabilities. Instead, it might be AI's ability to orchestrate the vast number of existing, known, maybe low to medium severity vulnerabilities and combine them with all those fragmented pieces of reconnaissance data, weaving them together into optimal, complex attack campaigns that a human team with limited time and resources would simply never discover or piece together manually.
The ability to see the forest for the trees, but at machine speed and scale. The cybersecurity arms race, driven by data and automation, is definitely about to accelerate, exponentially.
A sobering thought to end on. That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.